Hello and welcome to the Cinema 4D course where we cover one node at a time at a pace that anyone can handle, whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. You don't need to pull any all-nighters in order to be able to learn how to 3D model with nodes. You just need a teacher that will teach you where the gas and brake pedals are before encouraging you to practice driving on the highway for the very first time. Your very first time driving. So here we break it down one step at a time, at a pace that anyone can handle. If you have any questions throughout this course, please feel welcome to drop them in the comments below. If you feel like you'd like more help than that, I also offer live Q&A sessions where you can ask me questions, as well as one-on-one coaching on my website, ambient3danimations.com. Today we're going over some of the basic settings for the cloner inside of Cinema 4D, and we're applying that to our project that we've been working on, 3D modeling a countertop. We have this countertop, and I go ahead and select my nodes mesh. You can see here all the nodes we've covered so far. Now, if I want to make changes to this, I can adjust any one of these individual nodes or the settings for them, which is really helpful because chances are when you're 3D modeling something, it's nice to be able to customize it for different projects. Maybe you need a 3D model more than one kitchen or something like that. Or maybe for your island, you want to have a center part, but you also want to have something that looks nice and finished at the end. Because you can see here, this would be really nice to be modular as a center part, but at the end, you'd probably want this to overhang the granite part, to not only overhang here, but also overhang on this side. So we're going to talk a bit about that, and we're also going to talk about the cloner here. So you can find your cloner right here. I clicked on it, and it added it into our objects manager. So the cloner and how it works with nodes could be an entire course on its own. In fact, you could probably make an entire course on just the cloner and how you can use different effectors and fields and all different kinds of tools with the cloner and how you can use nodes with it. So if you're interested in something like that, please let me know in the comments below, because then I can start working on a course like that. Today, I'm going to teach you the basics so that you can apply this to a project like this countertop here. And we're going to go through some of the basic settings rather than going through every single setting here in this case. So here we have this countertop. To start off with, if we want to have this be cloned, we need to drop our nodes mesh, which we use to create this, within the hierarchy of the cloner. And that's how we tell Cinema 4D, this is the object we are cloning. And in fact, you can clone multiple objects. So if you had multiple countertops with different types of drawers and things like that in it, you could actually drop them within a cloner and clone all of them and have those alternate which kind of countertop configuration you'd like next to which one. So that's really nice, and that's a way you can get some really interesting drawers and different details within your model. For the simplified project here, we're just using one, but I want you to know that in case if you want to explore other options beyond what we're doing here, because make this project your own. Put your own voice in it, put your own creativity in it. You don't need to copy me exactly. I teach you the tools so you can apply it to this project and others beyond this and bring to life what you imagine in your mind. So in here, you can see that we have the width, height, and depth for our nodes mesh because we had set that up in one of the earlier lessons so that we have these settings and we can actually access them without having to click on the individual nodes. So that's really nice, but you can see that our width is 76 centimeters. So we want this to be spaced out by 76 centimeters linearly. So right now we have this grid formation here. So why is it working in this grid and how do we change it? Well, let's click on the cloner and talk about that briefly. Right now we're focusing on the basic settings. The advanced, we can really get into more advanced nodes with the cloner. So again, let me know if you're interested in that. But within the basic, we have these different modes. And these tools have been around for longer than the advanced, which came out in 2026. So for these, you'll see that we are on grid. Makes sense. We see this grid formation here. We can choose honeycomb. And much like a beehive, you can see this follows a similar pattern. You can choose radial. And this one, you see a lot of nature with flowers and things like that. There's a ton of radial symmetry, radial type of cloning in nature that you can find. So this comes in really helpful, especially if you're 3D modeling flowers and things like that. We have objects, so you can actually clone this amongst an object. So if I were to drop a plane in here, click on my cloner, drag and drop the plane into the object, you'll see it's cloning amongst the plane. Now, is it going the wrong direction? Yes. So let's adjust the direction. I'm going to turn off this align clone, and you can adjust the count here and so on. But this isn't exactly what we're looking for with this. So what we need right now is linear, because we are cloning this in a line. So we'll go ahead and click on that. So we're getting a little bit closer. It's going in a line in the wrong direction. In the Y direction, we want this to go in the X direction. And if you'll remember from earlier, our width is 76 centimeters. When we clicked on our nodes mesh, our width is 76. So we need to look at these values down here, because this is how it's moving per step, which is our mode. Right now we have this moving 0 in the X. We need the X to be 76. Let's change that to 76. Okay, so we have it moving 76 to the right linearly, but still moving 50. You can see right here, 50 centimeters vertically. Now that might be helpful for some stairs, but that's not going to help us here if we want to start cooking on a countertop. So let's adjust this to be 0, because we don't need floating countertops here. We are not magical fairies that are cooking in a kitchen, and we cannot reach that. So 0 centimeters. Do we need this moving in the X direction? Nope, but just showing you how that would look if I adjust that value there. That's what that's controlling. So at this point, what if you want to change the length of your countertop? Well, you can adjust that here. So I can adjust the count, and you can see I can make this as long of a countertop as I'd like and really customize this further. So this is parametric on multiple levels. Number 1, our mesh itself is made up of values and settings we can adjust to customize this countertop. So we can have this be adjusted further, and we don't have to start over from scratch, because this isn't what is called destructive modeling, where you can't go back a few steps to make adjustments. Now I'm going to take back the account a little bit, because I don't think we need an island that long. This is pretty decent, pretty nice. And I'm going to delete the plane. It's not necessary in here. But you know what is necessary in here that we're missing right now? Well, if we were to zoom in on this countertop, these are working great for being in the center, but what if we want the counter to overhang a little bit here? Like, this looks really nice when the granite goes beyond the edge a little bit. And that makes most sense for the ones in the center. So I'm actually going to rename this Counter Island Center. Okay, so now we have that. Very nice. Now let's say, speaking of this being parametric, we need one for at the end, and we also want one that's designed to go up against a wall. Maybe we don't want an overhang on this side after all. So we're coming up with all these changes, all these little details that we want to add into this kitchen. Well, luckily we 3D modeled this with nodes, so that should be pretty easy. Now what we're going to want to do, first of all, is I'm going to hold Control, and I'm going to copy this and drag it down here. Now this one, I want to make this an end cap. This is going at the end of the island. So I'm going to name this end cap. And if I solo this, you can see this is our model here. I soloed it using this button here. Viewport solo. So let's take a look at this and drag up our node editor here. So if you look at this, we can see the steps we took. And this is helpful. Now we were working on the granite countertop up here. And this step is a step in which we extruded these two ends here. We extruded 2 and 4. Now we can visualize this by going into our options and turning on our polygon indexes. So you can see we extruded 4 and we extruded 2. Now it could feel tempting to just add in 3 in here. 3, 9, and 7, but you'll see that doesn't quite work if we add in 3, 9, and 7. I'll click away and you'll see here that didn't work. So why didn't it do it? Well, because the order in which you do these procedures is really important. So let's delete that. Because in order to extrude, so the reason why that didn't work is because first we needed to extrude those two sides before those polygons even became available for us to work with. So we need a whole other step in here. But luckily, again, we're working with nodes, so that is easy. So what we need to do is hold Control and duplicate the extrude here. So we're just adding another step into this procedure. And now we'll drag the geometry to the geometry of the extrude and the extrude to the geometry. So we have everything connected. Now we're going to delete the default here because we're just extruding what was left from before. And what's nice about duplicating this is that we have the offset we chose for the other sides here still being used. Now, as a secondary step after that, we can add in 9, 3, 7 into our selection string and click away from that so that it updates. And you can see that we have this very nice clean end here. So that is fantastic. We now have an end cap. So now you'll see that we have another problem to solve here. And if you're wondering what that problem is, it's that we want this to line up perfectly with the end here. And we don't want to do a bunch of math. At least I don't feel like doing a bunch of math, adding up the width of all of these to get it over here. So what can make our lives easier in this instance so that we don't need to do as much math? We can have Cinema 4D do the math for us. Now, how do we do that? Click on this little gear next to the magnet-looking button that says Enable Snap. You can see that there's 2 different gears. This is the one we're clicking on. And in here, if we navigate over to Quantize, you'll see your quantize settings. Now, by default, this is usually set to something like 5 centimeters. In our case, we want it to be the width of the counter, because that allows us to snap to increments as we move an object within Cinema 4D. So we want to change this to 76, because that's the width we're working with here today. So you can enable Quantize here permanently by hitting this button. Well, until you turn it off again by hitting the button. But I like this other method here that I'm going to show you. If you click on this arrow, like you're going to move it, The hotkey for move is E, by the way. And you hold Shift. We're going to move this over in increments of 76, since that's our quantize. And you can see it's snapping. And we can snap this perfectly in place. So that's real nice. Now we need another one at the other end. So I'm going to hold Control to duplicate this. And I'm going to hold Shift again to snap this back into place. So now we're at the other end, and you can see we have another problem here. It's facing the wrong direction. So now we need to hold the R hotkey in order to activate rotate, and then we need to click on this green handle here, hold Shift to activate quantize again, and we're going to snap this to 180 degrees. Now we're going to move it over again 76 centimeters by holding Shift and snapping. Now we have a lovely island, and it's looking pretty good. Now, what if we want this to fit up against a wall and we don't just want an island in our kitchen? Well, good thing we 3D modeled with nodes. Am I right? So let's go ahead and actually, let's just duplicate this whole section with the cloner, and then we can have something going against the wall that's the same length. So I'm going to rename this cloner island, and then I'm going to copy and Control V or Command V if you're on a Mac to paste. Control V, Control C, Control V if you're on a PC, Command C, Command V if you're on a Mac. Okay, so now we have this going on here. And this one is not going to be an island. Counter, I'll name this wall. Click on this one. And we'll name this wall. I'm just going to move this whole thing over. So now we have a new problem. We don't want the counter extruding into the wall. Now that's not going to look very nice. So luckily, we can click on our nodes mesh. We can go back in time to when we were deciding what we're going to extrude. And we can remove 4. We're no longer extruding polygon 4. And you can see that we have changed the wrong side. Let's try 4 instead of 2. So I'll delete 4 and add in instead of 2. And now you can see this side. This side is no longer extruding, the part that's up against a wall. And this side is extruding. And let's just say we want this to be longer. Well, we can do that. Let's add in another count. Let's add in 4 more. And then move this over in increments of 76 by holding Shift. And now we have a nice countertop for the wall. I'm going to turn off the indexes here for a moment, the polygon indexes. I'm going to rotate this up. I have my plane open. Attributes Manager has its settings in here. And I changed this to +Z. So now, if we feel like it, we can line this up. Now, you might be saying, hey, Leah, how do we get this to line up perfectly? It isn't snapping. Well, you'll notice that if you click on this gear icon again, you have your snap settings in here. So let's turn on our snap. Now you can snap 2 edges. We probably want to do that. Now I like to hit the middle mouse button to come out of our perspective view. Let's look at our top view for this because it'll be easier to move it into place with that. So I'll click the middle mouse button again, hovering over the top view so that we're working in here. I'm going to change our display to garage shading. We still have our plane selected. Let's go ahead and move this into place. You can see it's now snapping to the edge on our countertop. Polygon, edge, snap. Perfect. Now we can know this is lining up. We can use the T hotkey to be able to scale that, but we can also just adjust the settings in here, so we can make the wall a little bit longer if we want and line this up the way we need it to be. So that's really helpful. But you can see now how useful it is in order to be able to 3D model a custom kitchen, to be able to make those little differences, those little adjustments. And I mean, you could also add doorknobs onto each one of these if you'd like to do so. There's so many options here. Add in different types of drawers. And it's a really fun project. In the next episode, I'm going to go over how to build this, but while using capsules inside of Cinema 4D. So if that's something you're interested in and you want to know more than nodes, you want to know capsules, hit this button up here and join us there. I hope to see you there. And see you next time here on Ambient 3D Animations.